Hey, welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters, where we're exploring the intersection between fatherhood, entrepreneurship, and life. And today's Startup Dads, I'm really excited to have on the show Gary Smith. And this is another one of those expert interviews that we're going to have, and we're going to be picking Gary's brain, and we're going to be talking about the customer conundrum. So let me give you a little bit about Gary, and then we'll bring him in onto the show. So Gary works with executives and business owners to help them develop organizations where employees are happy, engaged, and productive. Customers are delighted and loyal, and competitors are very, very afraid. So he does this by helping them identify the gaps between where they are and where they need to be, and then design and implement solutions to close those gaps. So as business owners, you know this is something that we struggle with, Startup Dad, whether you're a small business owner or if you're at that next level and you have a staff, just like my guest that I interviewed just minutes ago before Gary. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation and Gary, to pick your brain. Welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Oh, Joel, it's a great pleasure. Glad to be with you and looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I told the audience a little bit about you. Please take a second. Tell us a little bit more about what you have going on right now, what's really exciting you about your business before we dive in.
Wow, so many good things going on. I come from a background of 25 plus years primarily in the manufacturing industry. Started out as an engineer, and then about mid-career switched to the operations side of the business. And I spent the balance of my career in corporate America basically running companies for other people. Started my own business in 1998, and really started it out as a consulting firm, and then branched from there into doing coaching, both business and personal coaching, professional speaking, and as you mentioned, we're going to be talking about a book that I wrote. It's the third book that I've written, called The Customer Conundrum. But exciting things happening. Just continuing to expand the business. As you know, you've been a guest on my radio show. I do a radio show on WSTK down here in Connecticut, and I've had some fabulous guests. Got more new guests coming on. So it's just life is exciting. I'll tell you what, I'm having a blast.
Yeah, and what's really special about this interview, and like you mentioned, is I was honored to be a guest on your show just a few weeks ago, and then also the way we connected, and the fact that you also have three daughters was a big part of how we got connected. Because my sister, who was on your show, and you guys got connected, and she was like, Joel, you absolutely need to meet Gary and try to get him on to your show. So this is a perfect, because it's a combination of you're a startup dad, right, with three girls, very successful startup dad, because your girls are doing very well. And then you're also going to be sharing with us some of this knowledge and expertise that you have with all your years of experience. So I'm really excited to be talking with you and to be on the other side of the interview.
Yeah, you get to ask the questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gary, let's talk a little bit about the family first, since some of my expert guests are not all dads, but like I said, want to pick your brain a little bit about that before we jump into the customer conundrum. How have you been able to tell us a little bit more about your family and the success of your girls and how well they're doing? And then just tell us how you balance all that since 1998.
Well, fortunately for me, my kids were pretty well grown by the time I started my own business. I mean, in 1998, my oldest daughter was a junior in high school. There's 7 years between my three girls. So she was 18. My youngest would have been 11. But really the key for me has been having a wonderful wife at home. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and so she kind of freed me up to do the things that I needed to do as far as being out in the marketplace, doing the stuff that I needed to do, whether I was working for someone else or being on my own. And she was on the home front, and the only thing that I really tried to do was be very intentional about making sure that I was available to the kids. So whenever they had something going on at school, I was there. When I was on the road traveling and away from home, I called home multiple times every day, and even got a chance to talk to them before they went to bed at night and things like that, so that they knew, even though Dad wasn't home, that he loved them, he was concerned about them, and cared enough to to stay in touch with them. But I really give a tremendous amount of credit to my wife, because without her, the kids would not have gotten the start that they needed. My wife is a teacher, and so she equipped the kids with good study habits and things like that. And we worked hard to give the kids the opportunities, both educationally and financially. And the girls they've really taken advantage of that. My oldest one is now a doctor. She's a neonatologist. My middle daughter is a nurse practitioner in the oncology field, and my baby is a corporate attorney. And so they have their own lives, and they're doing really, really well, and we just thank God for that. So I think it's a combination of maybe two things, Joel. One is parenting intentionally, and the other one is just wearing out your knees in prayer for your kids, that God will keep them safe, that He'll guide them, that He'll open the right doors of opportunities, and let them know and be very clear with them about which doors they should walk through and which doors they should close.
Wow, wow, that is amazing. To hear, to hear that you have three girls. One is a doctor, a nurse, an attorney. That you guys are absolutely blessed, and you guys absolutely have done something right. And I love the fact that you talked about parenting intentionally, and the fact that you talked about being present in their children's lives. Because I think you're definitely ahead of the game, because 1998, I don't know when the trend exactly started to happen with dads who wanted to be engaged, who wanted to be present, as opposed to just kind of go work the 9 to 5, come home, and then spend a little bit of time with their kids, and then repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, right? So it sounds like you were very much involved and engaged and wanting to be there at different events. And then if you weren't there, you were able to call in and be active. I'm reading this book right now called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters by Meg Meeker. And it talks about so much that the most important person in a daughter's life is the dad. And clearly everything you were doing to have 3 successful children were the right things. So that's awesome.
Well, it's exciting, and we really should try to, to figure out ways to be involved. I mean, I remember one function where I can't remember if I was not going to be there or if I was going to be late, but my wife was there, and it was a performance by one of our daughters, and she actually called me up on the cell phone and, and held the phone so that I could hear. So even though I wasn't there at the time, I was able to participate, and the kids knew I was there, I mean, even though I wasn't there physically, I was listening in and that sort of thing. And so, like I said, that intentionality with what you do. And I think that's our responsibility as parents, is that if you're going to bring children into the world, you have to do so with the attitude that there is a commitment there that you must maintain. And I've got to be real honest, Joel. When I was younger, I mean, I was 28 years old when our first daughter was born. And at that point, as a man of God, as a father, as a husband, I hadn't grown up yet. And it was really, my wife who took the reins of things, and was really the one who had an awful lot to do with teaching me, what intentional parenting was all about, and what was required of me as a father. And like you said, it was not just the type of thing. I mean, yes, as the head of the household, it was my responsibility to be the breadwinner, to go out and make enough money so that she could stay home, and so that we could afford to live and plan for the future and plan for the kids' education and all of that sort of stuff. but that's not where it stops. When I come home at night, and I walk through the door, I've got a family that's waiting for me, and I have children who need me. And so when the kids were young, my wife and I would kind of do things like tag team the homework. She would do stuff like English and social studies, and I would do math and science because I'm an engineer. And so we would try to split those things up, and work with the kids and be involved with them. And even after the kids got older, I know when my youngest daughter was in high school, my wife had gone back to work, and I was still working. And so she would come home in the afternoon and be home by herself. And we had a rule in our house that there's no TV or anything like that until your homework is done. And usually around 3:30 in the afternoon, I would call home just to make sure that she was home. She had gotten home safely. And most of the time, she would say, "Oh, I'm here. I've had a snack. I'm sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework." And one day I called home and I could hear the TV in the background. And before I even had the chance to ask the question, it was like, "Yes, Dad, my homework is done." But knowing that we care enough to stay in touch and to monitor those situations, and I think from that standpoint, when your kids know that you're going to do that intentionally, it's kind of sort of, and it's the same thing in the business world. You get what you expect, you get what you measure, and when people know that you're going to follow up, they tend to do the things that need to be done.
Nice. Now, one more question before we jump out of the startup dad phase and into the customer conundrum. You mentioned that your daughters were your youngest was 11 years old when you took the leap. That's still pretty. I mean, that's still young. That's still very scary to have. And your oldest was 17, heading into college, which now is the concern because a lot of my coworkers, the kids are in high school, and my story with Intel Corporation closing down. And they can't even fathom starting something right now because of college and all the kind of stuff that they see in the near future. So how were you able to make that leap?
We planned ahead. That was the biggest thing, that, from the very beginning, we had been planning and kind of putting money aside for a rainy day, to say, we realize we're going to have ongoing expenses. And that's what I recommend to people. I plug them into people like Dave Ramsey. I think Dave is one of the best guys out there as far as financial management is concerned, but we always, right from the very beginning, my wife and I had the attitude that, that we would not have any more debt than was absolutely necessary. And for us, that meant, our mortgage is the only debt that we would carry. We never bought vehicles on time because we just refused to take a loan on a depreciating item. We had an agreement from the day that we got married that if we have a credit card and the end of the month comes and we get the bill, if we can't afford to pay the credit card off, the entire balance of it, we cut it up and we use cash. And it's been 39 years now, and we've never had 1 month that we haven't been able to pay our credit card bill. And we kind of followed the philosophy. I think it was, in fact, I was talking with a fellow this morning. It was Ben Franklin, I think, who said that there are two ways to become financially secure. One is to make more money. The other is to spend less. But the fastest way to become financially secure is to do both. And so we've always done that, and that's what we've passed along to our girls, is that, you pay yourself first, you save your money, you work hard, make as much money as you can, but then, don't allow your lifestyle to expand to the income level that you have. Always have that gap between where your income is and what your spending is, so that you have that, what I call a relaxation zone, so that you've got a buffer in there. And I've taught the girls to have income out there, put away, so that you have, somewhere between 6 months and a year of living expenses. So if anything happens and things go south, you have time to sit back and take a breather and plan what your next steps are, rather than saying, if I don't find a job in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to be out on the street. So it's those sorts of things. It's deliberately planning ahead, and that's part of the intentionality, I think, of being a parent. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, and I love the fact that and one of the reasons why I have the image of myself and my daughter, it's kind of like the logo of Startup Dad headquarters. And what you're combining here is the intentionality of being a parent and the intentionality of being an entrepreneur and a business owner. You have to have intention, and what you measure gets done, right? Something like that. It's what you measure gets done.
You get what you measure.
You
Yeah.
get what you measure, right? Exactly. So now let's jump into. Thank you for taking the time to talk a little bit about the startup dad aspect of things and sharing with us your family and some of your successes and the things that you and your wife have done to make that happen. What's the customer conundrum?
Well, look, the customer conundrum is it really kind of has gotten fostered out of a lot of customer service experiences that I've had and people that I've talked to. But really what it is that it addresses the fact that there is a huge disconnect between what companies believe that they are offering as customer service and what their customers are actually experiencing. And the statistic that I often use is that there was a study that was done a number of years ago, and it was a statistically significant study. I mean, they surveyed like 1,700 companies. And these companies, on average, 80% of the companies felt that from a customer service perspective, they were giving somewhere between great and outstanding customer service. And yet when they surveyed customers of those companies, only 8% of their customers agreed with that. And so what it says is there's a huge gulf between, on the one hand, what companies are saying, they do as far as customer service and what their customers are actually experiencing. And so the goal of the customer conundrum is to address those issues and to really lay the foundation for companies to take a very deep dive into their organizations and identify where the gaps are between what they're doing and what they need to be doing to provide really outstanding customer service and develop those loyal customers and to use their organizations from a customer service perspective as competitive weapons to really outsmart and beat their competition.
Wow, that is amazing. In terms of the gap, I know the feeling of feeling like you're the pride and thinking that you're providing extreme amount of value, right? The word value we hear a lot nowadays with the entrepreneur world is just I'm giving so much value. Yeah, I'm awesome. But then to actually survey the customer to find out only 8%, that's a huge gap between what the company believed and what the customer actually was getting. Where do you see that? So now if we're actually first, what size company are we talking about in this survey, and what size companies do you typically work with?
It's medium-sized companies. Was the target of the surveys, and typically I work with small to medium-sized businesses, and by that I mean anywhere from startup companies to companies that have $40 to $80 million in sales.
Okay. Now, how does this? So the startup dad community mainly are in that kind of small to medium. Either it's a solopreneur, kind of the one guy. Trying to provide value and doing the marketing and doing everything that he needs to do, or the dad who has something like an Infusionsoft, a couple of virtual assistants, maybe one or two on-hand employees. Now, what are some of the things you do when you first sit down with them to start to figure out how big is their gap between what they believe and what the customers actually get?
Well, the first thing that I try to focus on, and this is, the whole customer conundrum came out of a model that I developed probably 25 years ago. At the time, I was working for a large multinational corporation. I was head of engineering, and I was dealing with a lot of technical people, a lot of engineers, but as you can imagine, when you're in a large corporation, things tend to get segmented. And so it's like, well, engineering has their little slice of the pie, and sales and marketing has their little slice, and finance has their little slice. And as a result, engineering felt very disconnected from the rest of the company. And so what I did was I created this business model that I nicknamed the Optex Model after the name of my company. And it was aimed at originally at defining for technical people how a business really works. What are the various elements that are required in order for a business to be successful? And then to say, okay, here's how we fit into, to what the company is doing. And it became, when I started dealing with the whole customer conundrum issue, I went back to that model, and it was like, wow, this is a really, really perfect fit. But where I initially start out with people is to sit with them, and the first question that I ask, which is really kind of at the core of the model, is, what's your goal? What's the goal of your business? And you would be surprised at the number of answers that I get, and a lot of it is, well, I want to add the most value, and and on and on and on it goes. And I say, yeah, but at the bottom line, if you get right down to the bottom line, right down to brass tacks, what's the goal of your business? And my point is that the goal of every business is to make money. You got to be making money. If you're not making money, you're not going to be in business very long. Now, some people have come back to me. I worked with one organization a number of years ago that was a nonprofit, and I was doing this presentation about my business model in front of the board of directors of this nonprofit. And he said, well, we're a nonprofit. Our goal is not to make money. And I turned to the woman who was the CEO or CFO of the company, and I said, Ronnie, if you guys aren't making money, how long are you going to stay in business? And she said, not very long. So even if you're a nonprofit, you still have to take in more money than you give out, because if you don't, you're not going to survive. But my point in doing that is to make another point that I think is more important, and that is that you don't make money by focusing on making money. Money is not a product. Money is a byproduct. It is a byproduct of the service that you render to the marketplaces that you serve. And so your focal point needs to be not on, I've got to make money, but how do I add value? How do I provide that excellent customer service? And if you do that, by default, the money will be there.
Nice.
So that's where I begin, is trying to establish that, that kind of root level understanding, because at that point we've sort of leveled the playing field. We're on the same page, and now we can begin to move forward.
Right. Yeah, I like that approach, because we do often hear the value piece, offer value, but at the end of the day, like you say, you have to make money, right? You have to, because you're in the startup dad situation, you have to provide for your family, right? So, but if the money is the motivating factor, and that's the only thing that you're focusing on, and not focusing on the value, you've missed something. And then there's definitely, I guess you could probably get lucky, right? You could probably get lucky. You could probably still make a lot of money, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that still make a lot of money by not providing a lot of value. But if the best way to go is to provide that value, figure out what your customer really needs, and then give it to them. So how go ahead.
I think Zig Ziglar, who's one of my mentors and one of my favorite people in the whole world, said, you can have anything in life that you want after you're willing to help enough other people get what it is that they want.
Yeah.
And so when we take that sort of approach, and it's not just in, looking at the whole money versus value thing, but when you're dealing with a customer, can you and I might be sitting across the table from each other having a cup of coffee, but can I sort of get out of my own self and walk around the table and sit down beside you and look at things from the standpoint of, what is Joel trying to get out of this relationship? What is it that he really needs? And how can I help him get that? And if you begin to look at another guy who's a great guy is a fellow named Roger Dawson, and he's probably one of the world's best negotiators. And one of the things that he talks about is that so much of the time negotiations are difficult because we walk into a negotiation, automatically assuming, that you want this and I want the opposite. Therefore, we're going to argue a lot about things. But he said, if we will take the time to figure out what it is that, stop thinking about what it is that we want and think about what is it that the other person wants. He said 90% of the time, what they want is not mutually exclusive to what we want. And if we can help them to get what it is that they want, they will give us what we want. And so you really can create those win-win situations. And so as we're doing that in business, do we look at our customers like that, from the standpoint of how can I create a win for you? And a win for you automatically becomes a win for me.
Mm. Yeah, you know what you mentioned there, a point that you mentioned there, and you also mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I think it's really important to talk about is you mentioned taking the time, right? And I think a lot of the reasons why you have this huge gap, right? That 80% to what the companies felt and 8% of what the customers felt. When I think and I tie that into the lean or the startup world, and Eric Ries's Lean Startup book. And in terms of how people or how companies or startups have approached creating a product or a service, that in the past they would just start building it, right? And they have an idea, right? They think that they know what the customer is struggling with, and they start to build it, and they don't take the time to actually go and talk to the customer to understand and to have that cup of coffee and just understand what is it that you struggling with, what's your pain point, how can I help? And then from there, go and start to build the product and the service that will ultimately remove that pain for the customer.
That's right. Exactly. Right on target, Joel.
Nice. So number one was to identify the goal. What's the second step now? You've identified the goal with them. What's the step do you take directly after that?
It's to look at what I call kind of the front office, what your customer sees. And there are 4 different elements there. There's quality, cost, and delivery. And the combination of those 3 ultimately lead to the 4th one, which is demand. If you have quality, cost, and delivery that are in line, then you can create a demand for the product or service that you're offering. And then I begin to take those things apart and look at quality, because I think a lot of times, if you're, it works both for services and products, but I think from the standpoint of really generating an understanding, let's talk about a product. Let's say that you make a widget. All right, well, you can look at it from the standpoint of saying, okay, my customer gave me a blueprint and I make a part that conforms to that blueprint. Therefore, I make a quality product. Really? Are you sure? Have you ever gone to the point of going out and meeting with your customer and saying, I'd really like to see where this little widget that I make for you goes into your product? And a lot of times and we're talking about that value add, you can increase the quality of the product by looking at it and maybe doing something as simply as saying, you know what, I noticed that when you're assembling this product and my widget is part of it, the person has to pick the thing up and turn it over and rotate it around in order to get it in. How about if I package it differently for you? So all you have to do is pick it up and put it in. It's already pre-oriented for you. All you have to do is pick and drop. How much money is that going to save you? That all factors into the quality of the product. And so looking at that and saying, all right, do you really have that relationship with your customer? That's, are you willing to develop that relationship with your customer so that he knows that it's not just a matter of, I want to exchange my widget and I want to get paid for it, and that's where the relationship ends, but I really want to be a partner in your business. I really want to help you to be as successful as you can be, and I want to do it for several reasons. Number one, I want to do it because it's the right thing to do. Number two, I want you to succeed. And number three, I know if I help you succeed, that when you have opportunities down the road and you're getting more business, whether it's an increase of the product that I'm already making for you or brand new products, because of the partnership, because of the relationship we have, you're going to come to me. You're going to want to do business with me because I care about you. And so, we expand the definition of quality beyond, well, I made a part and it agrees with the blueprint, but we take it to the next level. And again, it's all about building relationships. If you want to have great business, great business out there, if you want to do business, if you want to make a lot of money, it starts foundationally with having good relationships with people and being responsive to their needs. And especially, if you take about that conversation on the service side, I'm an executive coach. And in working with people, a lot of times when I sit down with somebody and I say, what's your pain point? What is it that you're really struggling with? I find out that what they want and what they need are 2 very, very different things. And so it opens up a whole other world from the quality perspective of saying, well, have you thought about this? Or let's talk about this. And as I guide the conversation, I can lead them to an understanding that, this is what you really need. This is what's going to address the issue back here. The thing you're asking me to fix is not the root cause of the problem. It's a symptom.
Yeah.
Let's get to the root cause of the problem and fix it. So quality becomes very, very important. And then, cost. And fundamentally understanding how the cost model has shifted over the years. I mean, more years ago than I want to admit, when I first got out of college and started working, the cost model was, what does it cost you to manufacture your product? How much margin do you want to make?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the cost of your product plus your margin is what you're going to sell the product for. So if I had, something that cost me $100, and I wanted a 30% margin, I'm going to sell that product for $130.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now because of all of the competition around the world, what's happened now is that you have the same elements to the model, but they've been reconfigured. And that is, you start off with, what is the marketplace willing to pay for your product? Mm-hmm. Minus what's your manufacturing cost. And then that leaves you with a profit margin, maybe, or maybe not. But it's understanding those cost components and then looking at things from the standpoint of, are there better ways to be able to do things? Are there efficiencies that we can create? And in the service world, and again, going back to an example of coaching and stuff like that, it's how quickly can I get you? How, can I design a plan that will get you very, very rapidly from where you are to where you need to be, so that you're not making a huge investment to be able to work with me. And my goal on working with all of my clients is to work myself out of a job. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to be, dependent upon me forever. I want to be able to equip you with the tools so that you can use those tools, and after working with me for a relatively short period of time, 3 to 6 months, you're on your own, you're doing your own thing. Now, that has led to some interesting things. I had one attorney that I was coaching, worked with her for about a year. And at the end of it, it's like, you don't need me anymore. And she said, well, yeah, I realize that from a coaching perspective, I really don't need you, but I'd like you to be my business manager. And I said, well, what do you mean? What does that look like? And she said, I want you to sit down. I want you to help me formulate goals. And then I want you to meet with me once a month after I close my books at the end of the month. I want you to meet with me. I want you to hold me accountable. I want you to hold my feet to the fire. And I want to make sure that if I'm off track, that you help me work through and develop plans for getting myself back on track and stuff like that. It's like, okay, fine. So we meet 1 hour a month.
Nice.
And sit down and go through that stuff. But that's how the relationship has developed, and the trust that has come from my being able to work with her and show her stuff. I mean, her situation was really kind of unique. She was working, 10-hour days, and not being able to spend time with her family, and with just making a few simple changes in the way she was doing things, she now works 6 hours a day, makes the same amount of money, and goes home to be with her kids. So cost becomes a factor, and then delivery. We live in an instant delivery world. I mean, you go online to Amazon and you buy a product, say you buy a book or something like that, and once you've clicked on it to pay for it, it's like, okay, is it here yet? I mean, and it's really true, because you look at companies like Amazon and stuff like that who have been experimenting with the use of delivery drones in order to find a way to get people their product more quickly. Yeah. But it goes beyond that. It's understanding the dynamic of your marketplace. There was one company up in the Sturbridge, Massachusetts area that I consulted, and when I first started working there, working with them, they had an on-time delivery problem that was horrendous. I mean, they were quoting 4 to 6 week deliveries. They were delivering in 10 to 12 weeks instead of 4 to 6 weeks. So their deliveries were in the neighborhood of twice as long as they should be. So their on-time delivery was down like around 40%. It was awful. And so we started identifying what the issues were and dealing with those issues. But a few days after I started working there, I was having lunch with the president of the company, and I said, so just out of curiosity, who's your main competitor in this particular marketplace? And when he told me, I almost fell out of my chair. And he said, why? What's the problem? And I said, you're using the wrong business model. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, your company is a make to order company. So I call into customer service, I place an order for the product, it gets put into your production system. And if everything goes according to plan, 4 to 6 weeks later, I get my product. And he said, well, yeah, what's wrong with that? And I said, your competitor is a make to stock company. They're a Japanese-based operation. All of the product comes out of Japan. The competitor here in the United States is a distributor. They're not a manufacturer. So I said, literally, I can go back to the office. I can pick up the phone, dial a number, give them a credit card. And if I want to pay for it, I can have product tomorrow. You're operating under the wrong model. And he said, well, yeah, but our product is different and better than theirs. And I said, that may be true. The question becomes is, how long are your customers going to be willing to wait for those additional features? And what we wound up doing was, my recommendation to him was to create a hybrid business. So you have part of your business that is a make to order business, so that customers can get some of the extra features that they want if they're willing to wait for it, but also have a portion of your business that's make to stock, so that you have some products sitting on the shelf, so that if somebody has an immediate need or they don't need some of those special features, you can get it to them overnight if they want it. And so it's understanding, again, it's all about understanding your customer and what your customer's needs and expectations are, and combining that into delivery. So when you have your quality, cost, and delivery lined up properly, and you're really defining them in terms of what is your customer expectation, what is your customer's pain point beyond which they're not willing to move, or beyond which they will go to your competition, then you can really begin to create some serious demand. So that's what I call the front office part, part of the model.
Nice. And there is so much there that you covered, and that was amazing, everything you talked about. One of the things that so a couple of things that I pulled out from the quality standpoint, and I was thinking of this as you were talking about it, and then that quote from Henry Ford, like if I ask them what they wanted, they'll ask for faster horses, right? And being able to go in and look at the customer's process and saying, yeah, I see why you think you need this, but this is what you really need right here. So, being able to go in hands-on as the engineer, or as the provider of the widget or whatever it is that you're providing to your customer, being able, even though it's their line, their production line, or their product or service or whatever it is, you have a specific, unique expertise that you could come in and look at their system and say, yeah, that would help, but here's what you really need. This will be a lot better for you. And then building that relationship that way, I think is very important. And then when you talked about the cost standpoint, again, wrapping it into kind of like thinking about the startup dads and the online business owner in terms of that instant demand and the change in the cost model, going from how much it costs to manufacture it to, and then what's my margin, to now you're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs do, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, in terms of they will offer something at a very low price, something high quality at a very low price, maybe even free, to bring the customer in, and then take the customer through a series of products and services and stuff like that to eventually get them to their high ticket item, which may be coaching or a course or something like that, to try to change. Again, you're giving something away at a lower margin, potentially no margin at all, like you mentioned, and then but to build that relationship, to let them see the quality of work that you're providing and the value that you can provide, and then eventually walk them through a higher ticket item. So I love everything that you talk about with the front office. Now, one of the things the questions that I had as you were talking is, you mentioned building the relationship. How are you, one of the things I struggle with is you have these relationships. For example, you and I, we're on this call, I was on your radio show, I want to be able to touch base with Gary periodically or with my customers periodically. How do you do that? What is one of the ways you advise your customers to build that relationship and maintain the relationship?
I think that it comes with number one, as you build the relationship, it's about understanding who that individual is and what's important to them. It's not just a matter of, okay, you and I do business with each other, so I know you manufacture widgets and stuff like that, but who is Joel as a person? What are the things that are important in life to him? And then it's keeping it's kind of like creating a situation in relationships where you always have people in the back of your mind. You're always thinking of, of people as you go through your day. I do have a structured, follow-up system where I put, my contacts in, and it's automatically, every so many days or so many weeks, it will remind me, hey, you haven't touched base with Joel in a little while. Time to reach out to him. But also, it's the type of thing, a friend of mine told me a story that I think is a perfect example of this. He said, I met a guy on a plane one day, and he said we were sitting side by side, and he said he had a golf magazine, and we got talking about golf, and he said this guy is just a fanatic about playing golf. Spends every spare minute that he has, on the golf course type of thing. And he said, we exchange business cards and stuff like that. And he said, I thought that there might be a possibility somewhere down the road where we might be able to do business together. But he said we never really talked about it. But he said, like 3 months later, he said, I walked into a bookstore, and he said they had some books that were marked down. They were on sale. And he said there was this book on golf. And he said, I thought of this guy. So I grabbed the book. He said, it cost me like $3.95. He said, I grabbed the book, I threw it in an envelope, and I mailed it to him, with a little note that just says, hey, happened to be in a bookstore, saw this book, thought of you, so I decided to send it to you. Hope all is well. Maybe we'll get a chance sometime in the next couple of months to talk. He said, now, when I call that guy and he answers the phone and I say, hey, think he's going to remember who I am? Mm. Absolutely. And so it's that depth of trying to build the relationship, trying to learn about the other person, and especially if you're in a service related industry like coaching or something like that, identifying, who that individual is and what's important to him in life can be so critical as far as identifying future needs and how he might benefit from your services and that sort of stuff. So I think it's a combination. One is really actively building the relationship, and being willing to say, if it's somebody in the local area, there's nothing wrong with calling them up every once in a while and saying, hey, I'm going to be up in your neighborhood, can we grab a cup of coffee somewhere? And let's just spend an hour together. There's another fellow who lives up in New Hampshire. His name is Steve Gamlin. He's been on my radio show a couple of times now. And Steve and I have never met. We were introduced by another mutual friend, much like Casey did with you and me. And our conversations, when we talk on the phone, our conversations are just effortless. It's like, it's almost like I've known him for 30 years and we could just sit and talk and talk and talk. And we finally said, you know what, we got to meet one of these days. And it's like, you know what, one of these days I'm going to come down to Connecticut and you and I are just going to spend a whole day together. We'll go out to the park, we'll go to the beach or something, and we'll just go out and we'll sit and we'll talk and we'll brainstorm, and I think part of it too is being transparent in your relationships. I mean, I have a relationship with you, not because I necessarily think that you and I will ever do business together. I have a relationship with you because I like you. You're the kind of guy that I want to be around. You're the kind of guy who has the same value systems that I have. And so when we build relationships, not from the standpoint of, well, how do I posture myself to be able to, get somebody to do business with me, but we look at it from the standpoint of, I just want to get to know you. And if at some point, it leads to us doing business together, fine. And if all I get out of it is a brand new friend who I really love and I love being around, that's perfectly okay too. And so it depends on the attitude that we take. But so I think the answer to your question is kind of a long-winded answer, but build a relationship, find out who the people are, be really genuinely interested in them, and then create some sort of a follow-up system, whether it's in your calendar, your to-do list, whatever, to be able to follow up with that person periodically. And the follow-up could be an email, it could be a card in the mail, could be a phone call, anything that you want, but just blip things out there to people that just says, hey, I'm still here, I think about you, let's talk when you get some time.
Yeah. What I find interesting, what you just talked about, and so true, right? And when I think about it and compare it to, you talked about the instant delivery, right? Instant delivery of product. And I feel like a lot of times it's like this instant, this need to have this instant relationship. And it's like, oh, I'm going to touch base with this person. I'm going to meet this person. And then I'm going to, I want something from this person, as opposed to, or when I think about the online world of things, building this community. I'm going to build this community, right? This Facebook group, and I'm going to get like hundreds of thousands of people on this Facebook group. And it's like, do you really need hundreds of thousands of people to have a successful business? Or if you had 100 people that you really had, you built a community with, and you were really connected with, maybe even less than 100 people, depending on what you're trying to do with your business, but really establishing those relationships, deep-rooted relationships, to grow in a more, I guess, organic way, as opposed to the numbers, because I'm guilty myself, instant Amazon delivery, something doesn't come in 3 days. It's like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah. Why is it not here yet?
Did it go to the wrong mailbox or the wrong house? And the same thing with the communities. Like, I want to build this instant Facebook community of startup dads, and it's going to be, 5,000 dads, and like, by the end of the year. And it's like, do I need 5,000, or do I really just need to make some really strong relationships, add value to 50? And
well, there's a friend of mine named Bob Berg who wrote a book called The Go-Giver, and in there,
I love that book.
And in there he says, that all other things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those that they know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. And that's really the foundation. And the know, like, and trust part of it doesn't happen overnight. You have to earn that. And you earn that about caring about others and adding value to their lives. And that's where it comes to a point of sometimes, giving stuff away for free, just investing in the relationship, and being willing to say, a lot of times in my work, I'll be talking with someone and they'll say, well, you know what, I'm faced with this particular issue. And I'll say, well, have you thought about trying this kind of an approach? Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I never thought about that. That's a really great idea. And then they say, well, isn't that what you get paid for? And it's like, well, yeah, but right now, you're a friend and you're in need. You have a need. If I have a skill that will help that need, I'm going to share that with you. I'm not the type of person that I expect. I'm not like an attorney where, when I pick up the phone, I hit the button, and every 6 minutes you get billed so much money. That's not how I operate. I want to add value to you. And maybe down the road, that'll lead you to coming to me and asking for help. But more importantly, as we build the relationship and as you trust me and as you appreciate the value that I'm adding, maybe you run into somebody who's a friend of yours and says, you know what, I'm really struggling with this and I don't know what to do. It's like, you need to talk to Gary. Mm-hmm. And so you get that referral business out of the trust that you build in the relationship. And again, it's a difficult thing because it's not like that's my goal. I'm adding value for the sake of adding value. I'm adding, I'm giving to you because I love to give and I want to help. I have no idea where it's going to come back, but that's God's problem. My job is to sow the seeds and to do what I know is right. And I rely upon God for the increase. And if I'm doing the right thing for the right people, ultimately he's going to bless that and it's going to come back to me.
Gary, what about the individual that wants to take, and take? They see Gary has a good, he's a good heart. He wants to give value, and the person just wants to take, and take. And then there's no point do they ever offer to give back?
At some point, I mean, I think after a while, when you get some experience with it, you begin to realize that there are people like that, and you can tell who they are pretty quickly. And what I do is I will still give something to them, but if they continually come back and they want more and they want more and they want more, I'll just very politely explain to them, this is what I do for a living. And if I start sharing some of this other information with you, that's giving away the secret sauce, and that's what I get paid for. So if you want that information, I'm more than happy to share it with you, but you're going to have to pay me for it. And I just look at it from the standpoint of, hey, I'm a businessman. Ultimately, I'm in business to make money, and I will give and I will help people, and I don't bill for every minute that I work with people. But the bottom line is that if I give everything away, if I give all the secret sauce away, I've got no money and I have no leverage to be able to make a living.
Nice. And I had a startup dad on the show a while back, Anthony Tran, awesome guy. He's a web developer. And he talked about when he first took the leap, because he was one of the types that burned the ship. He's going to burn the ship. He took out a loan, I think against his 401k or something like that, or borrowed money. And him and his wife went full throttle. And when he first, obviously when you put that kind of pressure on you, it's like everything has to be money, 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 money. And he realized every single thing someone was asking for a little bit of advice, or maybe something with WordPress or some kind of website stuff, and he would charge. And then when he prayed about it and realized that this is the problem right here, his business wasn't growing. He was struggling. I think he was a month away from running out of the money that he borrowed. And then when he realized to stop doing that, stop penny pitching or trying to charge for every single thing, and start to provide value and give, then his business started to grow. And by the time I had interviewed him, I think he had replaced his salary, and his wife was about to quit her job and join him in the business. So definite truth, and 100% agree with that. As we wrap up here, with the customer conundrum, any other tips that you could share with us? I know you want to offer the startup dads either portions of the book or the entire book. I can't remember exactly. But any additional tips that you'd like to share with us as we start to wrap up?
Well, the part that we really didn't get a chance to talk about is looking at the back office of your business. So don't just look at the front office. Don't just think about things like quality, cost of delivery. Look at how your business is structured. The systems and processes that you use to run your business. The technology that you use, especially if you have an online presence and you're trying to sell things online. Look at everything from the standpoint of how does it impact my customer? And I mean, if you own a business where you have employees, think about things like your accounts payable system, your accounts receivable system. And when you make changes to those things, are you always doing it from the standpoint of, well, is this going to impact any of my customers, and how do I need to handle that relationship with them? Those sorts of things. And the final part of it is to always remember that whether it's the front office or the back office, who makes it happen? People make it happen. You have to care about your people. You have to train your people. You have to work alongside your people, and you have to set the example for your people. So people can learn more about that through the book. And and the offer I was going to put out there is that if for the first 10 people who email me, make contact with me through your show, Joel, we'll send them a copy of the book for free.
Nice, awesome. And I think I do wish we had more time to talk about the back office, because I think it's something that's definitely important there that you mentioned in terms of the system combined with what is the customer willing, well, at least in my mind, what I thought of is what is the customer willing to pay for? Because you could have all these systems and you could not have systems in place, and you have this very chaotic situation. And the customer doesn't care about that, right? The customer cares about their product arriving on time and being high quality, good delivery, and reasonable price. So I think the back office, and I'm interested to read about what you talk about in the back office, because I think there is a major component in there, because you're making adjustments, you're making tweaks to that back office, potentially spending money, but the customer doesn't necessarily care about the back office, the activities happening in the back office. They care about, the quality, the cost, and the delivery of their product. Is that true? Yeah.
Absolutely. But involving your customer sometimes in that discussion, or at least at the very least, looking at all of the systems and the procedures that you have in place and asking yourself, is this serving the customer? If I make a change to this, is this going to have any impact on the customer? If it's going to have an impact, is that impact going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Or is it just something that I need to communicate to the customer saying, we're making this particular change, let us know if you have any issues with it. And again, it creates another engagement point with your customer that says, I'm looking at every aspect of my business from the viewpoint of how does it affect you? How does it affect our relationship? And a lot of times there may not be any real impact to what you're doing, but the fact that you're going out and you're reaching out to your customer and the customer knows that you think enough about him to at least mention it, there again, you're establishing that credibility. You're building the strength of that relationship where he says, hey, you know what? Joel has always got my best interests at heart, and he's not making any changes in his business without talking to me about it. That's really important to me because I feel like he's really got my back.
Boom. Love it. So there you have it, Startup Dads, the customer conundrum. Definitely got to get your hands on it. Thank you for the gracious offer of the 10 free copies of the book, Gary. I'm definitely going to jump in and grab one of those 10. Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. Please tell the Startup Dads where they could find you, obviously online, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, yeah, you can find me online at optex.com. It's optex.com. That's my main website, and you get links to everything, my radio show, my blogs, my books, other products, everything right from there. And Joel, thank you so much for having me on today. You're a dear brother in the Lord. Love you, man, and looking forward to more conversations in the future.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on your show. That was really cool to be live and to sit there and have a good conversation. So have a good day, guys.
Okay, you too.